Okay, so this is going to be a pretty different video from what you're used to seeing. Basically, if you've never been to my channel, the main thing that we do is very highly edited commentary type videos about the NBA. But the only problem with that is it's really hard to really showcase everything that happens in a basketball game. And it really sucks that I have to throw a lot of that out. So what we're going to do instead is just break down the game as it goes. It's just going to be live commentary and just talking about all the ins and outs of what I would want to put in a video, but I just can't because it doesn't necessarily go with the topic. So instead of being forced into this really restricted area of content, I decided why not just break down a game. You guys could see what I notice, what I try to see, what I try to observe. And yeah, so instead of hearing Dors's Burke's commentary, you could hear mine instead. Anyways, I think people wanted to see Boston lose again, but it's about time for them. It's about time that they finally pull through. And so yeah, so here White runs the pick and roll. We got them into another ball screen. Oh damn, that's beautiful. Okay, first thing here. If you've been watching this finals, like obviously one of the biggest topics has been trying to attack Luka as much as you can, right? So here they clear out this right wing so that Holiday can come up. And because they know that Dallas is going to switch, what you do see Holiday here is put his hands on Derrick Jones's back, and that way he gets momentum going to the rim. So look, even though they're trying to switch, Jones is late because Holiday pushed off. Now he gets right into the lane, and that's a bucket. And, Holiday was really good in this series. I think he was a super utility man, someone that, Boston really needed. People often say he's an upgraded version of Marcus Smart, and I think, honestly, they both play pretty differently from each other. Holiday was huge. I think he's just a lot more refined, and he's a lot more disciplined in what he wants to do. I think Smart, I think Celtics fans know this a lot, but Smart was always a little bit more erratic. He wanted to take more chances. He was the do or die hustle type of guy. And I'm not saying that Holiday is not that hustle guy, but they definitely have different styles. And Holiday was definitely the more disciplined and refined guy that Boston was really looking for. So here we got Brown, ISO, and Gafford. Big thing here, actually, this series, Dallas had really dared Brown to really just shoot it. And he actually didn't really take advantage. I know back in March, people had talked about this with Golden State when Boston had destroyed them in that game where Draymond had just basically sagged them off completely and he had completely taken advantage. Dallas had done a decent amount of the same thing in this series, and it actually worked more than I actually thought it would. Oh, there's another Holiday layup. Okay, let's go back there. So, big thing here. Again, once Luka stops Holiday initially, he goes right into that screen to get Luka up, does the same thing of trying to slip so that he gets behind Kyrie because they know that they're going to try to switch it. He gets behind. Luka's way too late. He expects help, and look at all that space. Again, Holiday's been way better at playing off the ball compared to Smart. I think Smart, because he was one of their main passers, he really needed the ball in his hands a little bit more. Not saying that he was obviously super ball dominant, but he's definitely requires more ball dominancy than Holiday. So that's another reason why Holiday's been much better, just because he could play in many different spots. He could play as the big man. He could play as a guard. He could shoot. You can't really say the same for Smart. Okay, got Luka, quick dribble handoff. Bam, that's one of the first lobs of the series. Haven't really seen that much, but they had a couple in game 4 and start out well in game 5. Yeah, as you can see, okay, we got a switch. We got Kyrie on Horford. Again, they attack Doncic, and of course, Tatum misses. People in this series were not really impressed by Tatum by any means. I think that people wanted to see Tatum and Brown take that next step, and I don't really know how people feel about Brown taking that next step, but I know people did feel that Tatum couldn't take that next step. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. So now Brown's going at Kyrie. Oh, big thing in this series. Gafford's role essentially has been, let's be an all-time defender in the paint. So there he's trying to retreat back. And with Horford on the perimeter, now he's wide open. Big thing in this series was wanting to have Gafford stay down low as much as he could. But, it's really hard, especially when you have 5 shooters on the floor. It's just really hard. That's what Joe Missoula was talking about with Jason Kidd being a really smart coach, is that I think that's one of the specific adjustments that he was talking about. And, the reality is for a coach is like you can make as many adjustments as you can, but if you don't have at least an equal amount of talent or similar level, it's just really hard, even with adjustments, to try to win. That's why it happens so rarely. That's the thing about these 7-game series. It's not only do you get a larger sample size, but you have more time for the better team to really adjust, especially if the underdog comes out with a really good game plan to start. Damn, that's an incredible finish. But you see how they're always forcing Luka, right? Like, that's also been a big part of Boston's game plan, even though Horford fouled him there, was that they want Luka to be in the paint, which sounds weird, but when you have Luka on an island, he's able to just shoot that step back 3. It's just really hard to guard that. So for these defenders, basically they've been saying, okay, Luka, we'll let you get downhill and we're going to make you make decisions against all of our help defenders. Other teams haven't done a good job doing that against them, but Boston was able to do that. Oh, you see that again? He's done that at least 3 times now. Pushes against Kyrie, pushes his back. Now he pushes off. Now he gets a little lane. Now you create that 4-on-3. White is able to get past Kyrie and then gets fouled. Huge little things right there that is creating great offense. Holiday already has 6 points, and now he's created that foul. Basically responsible for 8 points there. Okay, so Porzingis comes in. He was obviously not healthy in this game. He was obviously lingering very slowly. I think the reason that they really brought him in, I know that he mentioned that he really wanted to just come and play because it's the last game of the season. It's the finals, like try to finish on our home court. But I think what Porzingis does is give Boston more versatility on offense. I think everyone here is mostly a 3-point shooter or driving to the rim, but Porzingis gives them another mismatch that Dallas has to be ready for. There's already so many mismatches that Boston can create, but having Porzingis on the floor to create even another one, it just makes it a lot harder. Okay, Holiday misses that one. So, yeah, Dallas was in it. Dallas was in it early on. We see that, again, they want to bring Porzingis in the pick and roll as much as possible. Josh Green comes, they try to pre-switch, and now they roll to the other side. And Josh Green shooting the top of the key, knocks that down. Josh Green was actually pretty good in this game, but knowing that he had to make those type of shots, again, even though the game was close, if you're a Celtics fan at this point, or even if you're just the Celtics, you should feel pretty good. All right, Luka and Brown, they bring the first defender, and Sam Hauser comes pre-switch. So what they do is bring PJ Washington in, and now Porzingis here, he's trying to trap him to the sideline. That's pretty good rotation back. And yeah, of course he comes out, but again, Washington wing 3, you're going to live with that, You're going to live with that. Tatum again. Oh my God. A fucking fadeaway every time. Every Celtics fan, if you're a Celtics fan, like, I don't know how tired you would be just seeing that all the time. Again, like, I think some people pointed this out, that like Tatum made life harder for himself. And I don't think that he's necessarily improved in that specific aspect, especially in terms of scoring. Now, Luka wants Sam Hauser. You see how Sam Hauser's forcing him right? You see how he's forcing him? Okay, now I force him left. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. See, you see how Luka goes to that step back there? But you see how once he made Hauser change directions, he went right to that step back. Wasn't the 3, but he still went to that step back. That's exactly what you should be expecting, especially when you're guarding Luka like that, You see Porzingis getting Kyrie there. Porzingis obviously was not 100% at all. He's probably like 20, 30%, honestly. But the fact that he was able to just still be on the floor and create that type of mismatch, again, doesn't matter how little he can move. If you still get Kyrie Irving on him, like, that's still creating really good offense, And that's something that no other Boston Celtic can really do. Okay. We got JB picking up the ball. Again, they're attacking Luka. But yeah, you see how much space he gave him? It was a lot of space. Okay, Tatum with the half spin. That's probably one of the better moves I've seen. Beautiful. especially because he knows PJ and Dante are right there. So he's going to the side where only Luka can come. Now Washington has just no chance. He has no chance of contesting that. Those are the type of moves that he is totally capable of. All right, we got Dante X and 3. So you see 3 threes from the top of the key for Dallas. That's the only reason why they're even in this game right now. Okay. Again, he's way out of position. Dunk. See that? Luka was not ready for Hauser, man. We get a dribble handoff, and Luka jumps out at Hauser. See, he jumps out at Hauser. That's going to allow Holiday to dive. Then we got Washington moving to the corner. So now Brown can cut, and that's a dunk. Those other plays, obviously, like that was more Holiday doing his thing. But that was just bad discipline. And the other thing there is, if you know he's a shooter, you can't be that far away from him. You got to be up so that you don't have to feel like you have to jump out at that. Because again, that's the shot that Luka was scared about. You see that? Like, it's not invalid, or you can't say like, oh my God, that's such a bad contest. That's not really what I'm saying. But if you know that Hauser's a shooter, you got to be way more up on him. Like right there, Exum, he is way too late. And all of a sudden you get a screen like that, that's a wide open 3. Oh, PJ Washington trying to go at Tatum. I don't understand that. And a layup. Yeah, I don't understand why they have PJ Washington trying to challenge Jason Tatum. That's kind of a weird matchup. You know what I realized? For people who listen to the LeBron JJ Redick podcast, how sometimes they talk about what people's IQs are like. Sometimes they'll be pointing out like people's dumb decisions. I think the one that I particularly remember the most is when LeBron, it was Redick. It was Redick who was saying how the possession was stagnated, and to try to create some offense with like 5 seconds left, they basically brought Kawhi Leonard into the pick and roll and then try to hunt Kawhi Leonard. I've actually seen that in the past, and I wasn't sure if that was like intentional or if that's just not thinking. The PJ Washington trying to go at Jason Tatum, that's just not thinking. And Dallas made a couple of those type of mistakes late in that first that essentially was the first domino to Boston winning this championship. The Luka and the Dante Exum ones on Sam Hauser, those are mistakes that you can't make at this type of time, especially when you're down 3-1. And there we go again. Look at that. So watch Hauser in the corner, all right? So PJ Washington takes Horford, Kyrie's onto Sam Hauser, and now Hauser's coming to the pick and roll. Create that confusion because they know Kyrie's probably going to switch. Kyrie jumps out. All of a sudden, now you got this wide open 3. So that seems to be a big part of their game plan, to set those type of screens, whether it's a ghost screen or having Holiday have his hands just push the other defender so that he kind of gets a little running start. Those are the type of things that we've seen a lot so far. And actually, if you actually notice later on, I think they actually had a mic'd up of Jason Tatum telling Sam Hauser to do that. So it seemed to be like a really big part. You see Hauser doing that again? Dallas was better prepared for that. Pretty good shot. So look, Sam Hauser does this again. He goes that screen, so Exum now has to go chase him. That creates a little lane for Tatum. All of a sudden, now you got PJ Washington coming over just to make sure that things are okay. Now Brown's open. And people are going to say, yeah, you can live with that. Yeah, you probably could. But, you're not going to be complaining about a Jaylen Brown corner 3 as well if you're Boston, right? See, again, they're okay with him taking that pull-up 3. Again, that's like a shot you just can't take during this time, You guys see that? Okay, Luka, again, Porzingis is forcing him left, which I don't think was part of the game plan. I don't know if that was part of the game plan. I don't think it was. But you see how Luka was going into that step back? That's exactly what he wanted. And Porzingis absolutely sold out for it. You see how it jumps to his side? When you jump to your side like that, it's just way harder to try to create any sort of contact. You guys know Luka is always looking for contact, but he doesn't even look to try to pump fake and get him here. He tries to fake him out instead. Pump fake. Porzingis doesn't fall. Great contest. It's about as well as you can do it. All right. Yeah. What the hell was that, PJ Washington? Some people say he looks like Flight. That's kind of true, actually. He actually kind of does. Certainly wasn't playing like Flight, but although I did see some memes after the game that the man channeled his inner Flight in game 5. Certainly wasn't memorable enough that he was good. That's for sure. Okay, again, we got that Porzingis mismatch with Kyrie. See Jaylen Brown's kind of creeping over to make Maxi Kleber think about having to help. And now gets all this space. Bam. That's smart basketball. So obviously, if you're Brown, like you're slowly cutting, but you see how he's not on a full cut? He's not fully cutting because what he's really just trying to do is just get Kleber out of the way. And these are the type of things that I didn't really see from Boston last year, especially when I made that video about the harsh truth about the Boston Celtics. These are the type of little things I did not really see, but that's very high IQ basketball right there. Okay, we got Kyrie, we got Luka. Again, they're trying to bring Porzingis in. You see how Brown's trying to force Luka to the sideline? He does not want Luka to turn that corner, or else Porzingis has to make such a long rotation. That's such good defense right there. Not just accepting the fact that he's getting screened, but the fact that he's trying to push through that, and you have Tatum right there. That's the type of defense that wins championships. I know they scored there, and I know that, you're gonna be like, oh my God, like, doesn't mean shit, but those are the type of plays that you got to try to make things hard. Luka had talked a lot about Boston's physicality. That's the type of play that, you're never going to see in the box score and you're never going to really pay attention to because they made the shot. But that's exactly what Luka was referring to. Okay. Got Drew Holiday here. Again, they want to create that mismatch with Porzingis. Bam. See that? All of a sudden, you create that switch. If you're Maxi Kleber, you are worried about Drew Holiday, but you're more worried about Porzingis and Doncic. And he's more guarding that than Holiday, so that's a wide open shot. Again, even though Porzingis is not 100%, him just being in that game has created so many different opportunities already. You see how much space Kleber's getting? That's so much space, especially for a Holiday who shoots over 40%. That is way too much room. But he created that. He also had that post up against Kyrie. You get the point. All right, Maxi Kleber on Tatum. Again, they want Doncic in the pick and roll. Tatum crosses over. Man, this is too many moves. But wow. Guys, I had a hunch that Tatum's not necessarily at his best when he has to make those type of moves. But I realized that, if it's a big man, that's probably fine. But I feel like that's a spot that Tatum really struggled with in the past. But the fact that he was able to go to a spin and then be able to finish like that, those are things that Tatum's been so inconsistent at, but that's a good sign to see. All right, here we go. So Boston's up 12. Man, the amount of times they're attacking Luka is crazy. See Holiday again, he comes up. Now you get the two guys you want. You have Lively on Tatum, and now you have Doncic on Holiday. So Doncic is more up this time because he wants to make sure that switch comes a little more cleanly. But that, again, gives a lane for Tatum to drive. This time he goes straight up. Great decel. You see how Kleber jumps so early? Kleber's going down. Tatum's going up and one. So that's a Luka special, by the way. Luka does that all the time. Again, you see that? Luka does that decel there because he sees Horford and Tatum. So first, he wants to make sure Horford gets out of the way. And Tatum actually times it pretty decently. But as Luka's going up, Tatum's coming down, foul. Now, Tatum's complaining, but that's certainly a foul. See, this is going to show up as a turnover, but what you're getting something really good here if you're Boston. You got Kyrie on Tatum, so now Gafford's pulled in. Tatum already has position on Kyrie. Now you get an open three here in the corner if Hauser catches that. Also not really the best pass, but that's exactly what you want. At this point, they're only down 9 with less than 5 minutes to go in the second. And I think people here may have expected like, hey, Luka and Kyrie are going to do their thing at some point. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that. Okay. So on the inbound, we got Hauser there. White comes to the corner. I don't know why he hesitated there. Hauser being right there to tip it. Man, why did he take that? What the fuck? Why the fuck did he take that? He just let Luka recover. Like, what in the fucking world? We got Luka and Holiday. Again, they're going to get Horford in the pick and roll. Even though we got a little blitz action, first, they made that pass really hard. And two, they had at least 2 defenders there, making sure Gafford does not catch that cleanly. Didn't really see that in that Minnesota series. Those are the little differences that you see that makes a huge difference. Again, we got Flight 2.0 going down the lane. Okay. Oh, he traveled. He traveled. Man, the more I'd say it, the more I cannot unsee it. Although June Flight's supposed to be goated, apparently, so. Okay, Jaylen Brown down the lane. But that's exactly what Dallas wants. Dallas wants Gafford just to hang around the paint. They want Boston to just challenge him. Dang, he just took him down the lane. Sheesh. Hey, man. Out of everyone, Al Horford definitely deserves this championship. Whether or not, however you feel about Boston, Al Horford definitely deserves it. I felt so bad for him in the past, especially since that man's gone through a lot. Getting owned by LeBron for like 5-6 years straight. Choosing to go to Philly and try to play in that terrible Sixers experiment. You guys still remember that when they had Horford, Embiid, Ben Simmons all together, and Tobias Harris? Like, that was a ridiculous experiment. I don't know why anyone thought that was going to work. And then he got traded out of there, went to Oklahoma City. Everyone thought he was washed goods. Came back to Boston, all of a sudden, man, hit the fountain of youth. Horford's interesting because I think everyone's going to remember him as a Celtic, even though he was a Hawk for such a long time. Damn, he get compared to Karl Malone. Come on now. That's a foul comparison now. Okay, back to the game. So Tatum, Derek Lively, forcing him right. Luka, oh man, that's a great pass. You guys see that? That's a big thing in this series, actually. Holiday's just been hanging around that dunker spot for a while. So when you got Luka there, he's got to make a decision. He's not quick enough to bait Tatum and then get back. You know, we did see that one time in game 1. But you see, he lunges. All of a sudden, he's like, ah, shit. Man, yeah, they've been attacking Luka relentlessly. You know, I don't think people really realize this, but this Dallas team is really a very elevated version of like those Blazers teams with CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard, you know? Obviously, you want Luka and Kyrie over Dame and CJ. Yeah, I actually think every single starter on Dallas you would want over the Blazers. Even though you're such an elevated version, at the end of the day, having two dudes that just can't really defend, it's getting really hard for Luka to really be any sort of impact on defense or to even be just hit it successfully. I think this was like the beginning of the end, actually. Okay, he's going right at Luka instead of just shooting it. Get to the corner. God damn. Once Brown brings Doncic in, Washington has to come over. Wide open 3 for White. Dang, it was only a 9-point game like 3 minutes ago. Washington, brick. Man, if you're a Celtics fan, you probably started to feel it right here. Again, bringing Doncic in the pick and roll. You see how Lively and Green switched places there? Because White's on the same side as Tatum, like that's where they think Tatum wants to go. And also they want to make sure Lively can properly help. Sidestep. Damn, I feel like that's like one of the few that he's made. I feel like he's missed a ton of those. Again, 64-44 at that point. Luka again trying to drive. Wow. What a tough shot. Forcing him downhill. That's the big thing. Being physical where Luka can't feel like he could just step back. They're so physical with him that now he has to beat him with physicality. That's a great shot, but that's not something that, if you're a Mavs fan, that Luka wants to see all the time. Okay. Oh, you guys see that? Peyton Pritchard's in the game. For people that don't know, that's exactly what he's here for. Oh, Luka bricks it. Peyton Pritchard gets it. That was absolutely the dagger. Can you imagine just being called in because you're so good at half-court shots? You know, this guy was the Jordan Poole of this series. You know, for people that don't remember, Jordan Poole made 2 crazy half-court shots against the Celtics at 2 different times. In games 2 and game 5, man, I remember those being complete demoralizers. I think if I remember correctly, in game 5, Boston was down 15 going into that second half. They had came all the way back, and then Jordan Poole hit that half-court shot, and the tune completely changed in that fourth quarter. Completely changed. This felt like, holy shit, that's the dagger. Especially when you're calling just to do this, it's a badass role to have. Back in that first quarter, PJ Washington didn't even want to try to take like a full court heave. It's exactly why you shoot them. I don't really know how much people really care about the rest of this game because we already know like what happened. But I think what I want to do is take some time just to talk about these two teams. Let's start with Boston, right? So I think a lot of people were very unimpressed by this run because one, they were very fortunate to have a lot of injuries. Jimmy Butler didn't play. Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. Giannis never recovered. And the Knicks had a whole bunch of injuries. But here's what I'll say. I thought about this for a while because it is true to a degree that their run was definitely easier than most people's runs. And I think the fact that Tatum and Brown didn't necessarily have the scoring numbers that we're used to seeing from them was somewhat disappointing. And I think a lot of people really wanted to discount that. I think both of them still have some issues when it comes to creating space or finishing. But I think what's so underappreciated about them, especially together, is that they can play with almost any type of prototype. They can play with almost any roster. Boston was never satisfied with their roster until they won a championship. I think the reason why they were so okay with pulling the trigger on just making sure this roster was good is because Tatum and Brown are capable with playing with so many different players. When they first came into the league, they were second fiddle to Kyrie Irving, and they played well in that role until he went batshit crazy that second year, But besides that, when Kyrie and Hayward were hurt, Tatum and Brown both took such a young team to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think people realize that. And they had Kemba Walker. They made that work. They had Marcus Smart as the point guard. They made that work. When they added Derek White, they were a finals team. And then this year with Drew and Porzingis, they still made the finals. The amount of sustained excellence, I think that gets lost, is the fact that they could play with so many roster changes and coaching changes in the most recent championships, like the Denver Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Lakers. What we saw was stars cranking it up to their highest peak and being absolutely dominant. And in this finals, we did not see Tatum and Brown do that. I think they showed flashes, they had their moments, but it was very obvious that we didn't see their peak. But I think the fact that they could play with so many different types of players, that's their greatest strength. People always focus on Tatum and Brown together. And yeah, I think it makes sense. I don't think those two necessarily are very compatible in terms of abilities. I think they both need the ball in their hands. They don't necessarily play the best off each other, but those two together play so well with a lot of other role players. I think Tatum is very well-rounded. I don't think scoring is necessarily his only skill. I think he's a great passer. I think that he's a great defender for sure. I think Jaylen Brown's the same way. I think his left hand still needs some work. And I think he's not necessarily the best ball handler, but the reality is both these guys are more than willing to sacrifice and do what it takes to win. Yeah. I know. Tatum, it's not like he gave up that many shots. He did not give up that many shots. But I think what him and Brown accepted was that we don't need to be the best player every night. That's what the Celtics front office realized too, was how can we win where Tatum and Brown don't need to score 30 every single night? I think in the past, especially with Marcus Smart and Robert Williams, they both had to be really good for this team to win, or else there was almost no chance they were going to win. Against the Heat in 2023, I think Tatum had a pretty good series, but Brown was definitely awful. And in 2022 against the Warriors, Tatum had a really bad series and Brown was pretty good. Instead of just saying, hey, we have Tatum and Brown, let's try to just run it back and just win it, Brad Stevens was not satisfied and said, we got to make changes. We got to make changes and make sure that they have enough support to do what they got to do. And he gave them much more support than they probably actually needed. But at the same time, that's what's the difference between the Celtics franchise and other franchises. You got a team like the Miami Heat. It was very obvious that they are limited talent-wise. But with such a great head coach, they were able to get all the way to the finals. And then they just don't do anything when push comes to shove. That's what's shocking to me. Is I think a lot of franchises in this position would not have the balls to say, yo, we got to make major changes to make sure that this team is intact. While the Celtics did make a lot of changes, It was always for one specific purpose. It was to make sure that Tatum and Brown had all the pieces that they needed to be as successful as possible. We didn't necessarily see all the scoring stuff, but I think what we did see is the fact that both these guys are so well-rounded where they can make such big impacts without having to score the ball all the time. With someone like Luka or Kyrie, they're not really making as huge of an impact, especially if they can't score the ball. But with Tatum and Brown, them being two-way players and being able to do all the other little things, that's the difference between winning basketball and losing basketball. So I do think Boston was definitely blessed with the road that they have, but I think it was pretty apparent this year that they were the best team. I think offensively, this team is still not really that great. It's pretty obvious what's happening and what they're going to do. Again, I think their defense specifically was very impressive. Their defense was very impressive throughout this run. And I think it's fair to say that for a lot of teams that couldn't figure out how to guard Luka and Kyrie, that Boston definitely knew how to do it. Actually, I've never really said this, so I'm not really a big Joe Missoula fan, honestly. When he took over last year, I know he took them to 57 wins. They were the second seed, and they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. In that video that I highlighted last year, those were some big fundamental issues. I think Missoula last year had a hard time with a couple things. I think he had a hard time managing the game, understanding how to break momentum. I know fans talk about that so much. That is certainly one of the things that he wouldn't do. And I thought he was just trying to be a wannabe Popovich. You guys have seen some of the shit that he says. I don't think his offense really impresses me at all. Look, I know that this team was the best offensive team in NBA history or something. Again, I think one, the regular season is truly very different. Two, their personnel really carries them more than what I think the system really does. But I think defensively, Missoula really buckled down and figured out what was wrong. What was wrong was that Boston was just letting other teams' superstars go off at a way ridiculous clip. It was ridiculous, man. Especially last year, when I was watching that Eastern Conference Finals, it was ridiculous to see how many times Jimmy Butler could just do what he wanted to do against fucking Grant Williams, Derek White, Al Horford. I was like, dude, you got to bring some help at some point, man. You can't just let this go on forever. And in this series against Dallas, they did that to Luka a lot. They were very selective with how they wanted to help, but I thought the way they're being selective was very smart. And that's not what I saw last year. For a lot of the regular season, it didn't seem like it had changed. So I was really concerned. But seeing how they guarded Luka and Kyrie was very impressive. And I think Missoula deserves a ton of credit for understanding what really went wrong last year and then making those tweaks. And understanding that, hey, even though Luka and Kyrie are pretty good against the switch, they're pretty good against the drop, that we don't necessarily need to change our whole defensive system. All we had to do was make a couple tweaks. Make sure that the wing defender was in Luka and Kyrie's way. Making sure that we were covering those corner threes. Making sure that Luka had to go downhill to get all his points. That's a really big difference when you're telling a defender, hey, all I want you to do is force Luka right and force him downhill. Whereas last year it was, I'm expecting you to guard Jimmy Butler straight up. You can't, it's the NBA. You cannot guard any superstar straight up. And if you're not taking any of their moves away, it is literally impossible to stop them. But that's exactly what I saw last year. And the fact that he was able to say, you can't do that this year, big kudos to him. As Tatum misses that layup, God fucking damn, dude. I was just talking about him and now he fucking misses that? What the hell? Anyways, if there's something that's going to be wrong with this team, it's going to be their offense. Their offense is still pretty predictable. It's definitely very talented, but I think Tatum and Brown do have some work to do in terms of trying to be better finishers and also being able to create better shots for themselves. But let's move on to Dallas' side. So as Tim Hardaway, of course, does what he does best, fucking breaking threes. I just don't think he's a good player, man. I know some Mavericks fans have said Jason Kidd and Tim Hardaway have some weird secret relationship together or something because he keeps playing. If I was a Mavs fan, I would not want Tim Hardaway on my team. Anyways, I did not expect to talk about Tim Hardaway for more than 1 second in this video. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. The Mavericks are a very elevated version of that Blazers team with Dame and CJ. Luka and Kyrie are definitely better players, and their role players are definitely better. You know, they could shoot better, they defend better, and they're just more athletic. At the end of the day, even if you're an elevated version, structurally, you're still the same. And the biggest problem with Dallas is that their guards, Luka and Kyrie, are just not good defenders. I know they had shown flashes. I know Luka has gotten better, but Luka's off-ball awareness and on-ball mobility are still not there. It kind of reminds me of like Steph Curry. You know, like Steph Curry back in 2016, he could hold his own at times. Even against that Kyrie shot in Game 7, it wasn't like bad defense by any means. But the point is that Steph wasn't really bothering LeBron or Kyrie at all. But now, like, Steph was able to improve his defense to the point where, dude, like, if you try to go at him, like, he will lock you down. And that's where Luka and Kyrie need to get to. If Tatum or Brown try to go at them next year, that they're comfortable holding their ground and saying, you know, you're not going to beat me like 6 times out of 10. Again, I think Luka is by far the best one-on-one player that we have right now. I think he has the widest skill set. I think the man is capable of pulling any sort of moves. I think he's a fantastic passer and the most complete offensive player. Luka definitely needs a little bit more help. Dallas needs another ball handler that can create their own shot. I think Washington and Derrick Jones need to spend a ton of time in the gym taking wing three-pointers. It was pretty obvious in his finals that Derrick Jones and PJ Washington, who are not good shooters in general, by the way, that if they don't have the corner three, it is very hard for them to make a really big impact on offense. I think in this day and age, we are past a point where having just 2 stars is going to be good enough to carry you to a championship. You got to have good role players all the time, and you got to have them do almost everything. Boston's all their stars can do multiple things offensively and defensively. But Dallas, they're kind of more one-dimensional, you know? Like, their players are a little bit more one-dimensional. You know, Luka and Kyrie are obviously the offensive connoisseurs, but everyone else is more defensively minded. And I know last year when they had their disastrous season, that part of it was because they were way too offensively focused, and so they went to focus on defense. Now they got to balance it out a little bit. I think they need to get more two-way players, what they thought Grant Williams was going to be. Poor dude, by the way. That wasn't the case, you know. Again, I think Dallas has a good future, especially with Luka and Kyrie. I think with those two, you're always going to have a pretty good chance. But they definitely need to add more versatility on their roster, whether it's externally or internally, you know? Last thing's a little bit more I should have said this a little bit earlier when I was talking about the Celtics, but just want to talk about Brown winning Finals MVP. I think he totally deserves it. Truly played both ends of the floor at the highest level. I think he made some huge shots in games 2 and 3. And more importantly, the man did a fantastic job on Luka, man. He did a fantastic job making sure that everything was hard for him. I think he has definitely been a great postseason performer for them, at times even better than Tatum. Just his all-around play in this series is what really warranted him this Finals MVP. No one played particularly that great. But if we're talking about this team being so balanced and their balance and versatility being the reasons why they've won, then I think Brown showed that the most. That's why he deserves to win. I think I'm going to end it off here. I know it's been a really long time. For anyone that's still listening to me right now, I just want to say thank you. I plan on doing these more often just because I think it's a way to flesh out all of my thoughts that I have. So even with the season done, there's going to be plenty of games that I want to continue to break down or just talk about, because I think there's a lot that I've wanted to talk about, but I just can't because when you're thinking about a topic and that's what you want to gravitate towards, that it is hard to just include extraneous stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.